I mean, I really look at it all as one campaign. When we launch these Don't Tread on Me and Betsy Ross shoes, that's really to inspire the people that are seeing this content to say, oh yeah, it is okay to love America, and it is okay to get excited about the freedoms that we have here, and those freedoms we are so blessed to have. To lead right into a weekend like a Veterans Day, where these are people who've raised their hand to serve this nation and protect the very freedoms that we just reminded everybody it's okay to be excited and happy and blessed that you have these freedoms. Telling those stories is what's so important to me. With this Veterans Day campaign, we have the opportunity to touch real lives, to have a real impact on individual people's experiences and hear about that and share that with the world.
You're listening to the Born Primitive Podcast. All right, good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. Welcome back to the Born Primitive Podcast. How we doing, Tone?
Morning, Bear.
Got the election day tomorrow.
Hey, it's coming.
Tensions are a little high. You doing all right?
Hey, I'm excited for this to be done.
Yeah, I think we all are.
Yeah.
We all are. And we have a special guest today. We have Claire, our Director of Marketing, and we're really excited about this episode because we wanted to dive a little deeper into a couple of the brand campaigns. One of them is ongoing, and the other one we're going to announce Friday. But since you guys are loyal listeners, you're going to find out here today. And we want to talk through a little bit of the backstory and the kind of the reasoning behind some of these things and how it pertains to brand marketing and honestly just leveraging a platform to try to do some good. And in our case, one might argue kind of go against a little bit of the mainstream narrative that's coming out of corporate America that maybe isn't representative of the masses. And we're trying to maybe provide a cut against the grain for the American consumer in a refreshing way. In a bit of an unapologetic way. So I'll summarize this real quick. Some of you may be tracking, but on Friday, we launched our Freedom Capsule, which is two brand new Savage One shoes. The Savage One shoe has been out for about a year and a half now and has absolutely exploded. And in true Born Primitive fashion, we thought, all right, how do we put our own touch on this? So this capsule was kind of an homage to the American Revolution and that initial fight for freedom and what originally brought us all together, we the people. And we thought, while initially it wasn't planned to be launched like 4 days before an election, when we kind of looked at our marketing calendar and that's where it kind of was pegged. And I'm like, Claire, you realize like 4 days later is November 5th. And we kind of looked at each other like, all right, that's either the worst timing ever or like the best timing ever. And, I think it's a little bizarre that we've gotten to the point as Americans where some people are like, ashamed of our founding fathers and the initial principles that and values that created our republic that led us to become a world superpower in less than 150 years when we went from this little 13 colony ragtag group of people that 150 years later are ruling the world. It was because of the American spirit and how unique that was, but also it was because of the foundation that was set by our founding fathers and that initial fight for freedom. And I think as Americans, we need to remember that. So this capsule, there's two shoes. It has the Betsy Ross edition, which is kind of a red, white, and blue shoe. If you're on YouTube right now, you can see it. But if you've already seen it on Instagram, probably. It has the Betsy Ross flag. It has We the People on the inner heel. And then the other one is the Gadsden edition, the Don't Tread on Me edition, which has the Don't Tread on Me snake. It says DTOM subtly down the tongue. It is a primary black with the yellow accents. And both of those are obvious symbols of the American Revolution. The Gadsden flag was flown in the first naval battle. It was kind of a symbol that Benjamin Franklin was all about the rattlesnake, and we'll get into some of those details. And of course, the Betsy Ross flag was the first flag of our republic. And ironically, I won't name them, but there was a shoe brand a few years ago that recalled a few 100,000 pairs of shoes because one of their athletes claimed that that flag, which is the flag of the birth of our country, was insensitive. So was there a subtle motivation to bring that back? I'd be lying if I said there was not. But I think more importantly, and Claire, I thought you did a good job articulating this in our brainstorming meetings with the team, was like, well, yes, this is a little bit of a cut against the grain. The underlying tone here should be unity in a remembrance of the values that initially tied us all together. And I thought that was really good when you articulated that, because there's so much division right now in our society, and I think we're all kind of exhausted from it. And, while this will definitely piss some people off, that wasn't the intent. But at the same time, like, we're not going to apologize for loving our country and what it stands for, right? And for the people that try to push that, oh, this is insensitive, it's like, read a fucking history book. You know what I mean? Stop with the banter that, oh, the Gadsden flag is this and that, and oh, the Betsy Ross. It's like, I mean, imagine raising a rattlesnake flag on the mast of your first ever naval battle as a country. Like, how badass is that? How are you not proud of that? You know what I mean? We're taking on the world's superpower at the time, England, which had the world's largest navy. We got a few ragtag ships, right? And we raise that flag, like, let's fucking go, motherfuckers. You know what I mean? So that I don't know how that has become a divisive symbol, and we need to remember our history. And obviously, we are not a perfect nation. We've had our blemishes, but we've made a lot of progress. And I think a more positive tone in the future and more pride in country is what is needed right now. And for those that are proud of to be American, we should not be villainized and made as the enemy, right? Because that's exactly what we need. So that is kind of the underlying theme of that capsule. And we'll get more into that. And then up next, and I think this might be my proudest moment and probably our proudest moment as a company. But every Veterans Day, you guys know we've done something pretty big. The last 2 years, we've been able to donate $100,000 to charity from our profits. The year before that, it was 75. As we've grown, we've been able to raise that number. But this year will be our biggest impacted date for veterans. And this Friday, November 8th, through Monday, November 11th, we will be donating 100% of profits to pay off veteran medical bill debt. Now, here's the fun part. We've already paid off $2.5 million worth of debt. And we have actually some stories of people that have already gotten their letters, and I'm very excited to share. I wish we had more. A lot are coming in as we speak, but we've gotten a couple already. And from Friday until Monday, we're going to pledge all profits in hopes of getting to a goal of a total of a $5 million payoff, which is pretty unreal. I mean, these are real people, real veterans. We chose medical bill debt because no one chooses medical bill debt, right? Like, it's not like you splurged your way into incurring medical bill debt. You're not that E4 in the Army that bought a Ford Raptor. You couldn't afford it. Now you're like, oh, now I'm 90K in the hole. What am I going to do? These are people that serve their country, and at no fault of their own, the credit's getting destroyed. They can't pay it off. A lot of them, are mothers and fathers, and there's, especially in the economy right now, they're spending it all on groceries and things like that. If you're 20K in the hole, like, you might never get out of that, right? So really cool to see the immediate impact. And what's empowering about this is we know we can do this because we know how our consumers have responded to these types of things in the past. If I didn't know how the consumer would respond, this would be way more of a leap of faith. Now, this still is, of course, it's a pretty huge goal. But we know the way we've positioned our brand in the past and our commitment to giving back, that on Friday when this thing goes live, like, it's gonna be gangbusters, right? And people are genuinely excited to support a brand that aligns with their values and is actually doing some good. And I think as we look into the next 20 years of brand marketing, like, I think that will become a much bigger component of success for companies. I don't see a lot of companies posturing themselves like we are in the market, and it blows me away because to me, these are such obvious values that I think so many Americans hold dear. And we're proud, I guess, to be one of the pioneers to really champion that. I think we are. I think there's, the Black Rifles, and there's a few other companies that have done it, but it almost appears that a lot of these companies are a bit afraid. And as long if it's not the corporate buzz line or the direction the wind is blowing that way in corporate America, they shy away from it, when we've been like literally this way since day one. And it wasn't really intentional in the beginning. That's just who we were, right? But it's pretty freaking awesome to now have a few 100,000 active customers that when that thing drops Friday morning, you know what I mean, and that video goes out, like, it's just going to be like game on, right? And you sit back and you watch the response and you say, these customers are giving us the ability to do shit like this. And then it's like a flywheel, man. It feeds itself, because I already have a big plan for next year that I won't tease for next Veterans Day, and it'll be way bigger than this one, right? And it's because I know what's going to happen. So I'll stop there. Exciting moment for us, and I know people will be proud of this. And hey, this will rock the boat a little bit with some people, but hey, we're not here to be friends with everybody. I would argue that this is supposed to be a unifying message, but people will interpret this the other way, and that's okay. As Americans, we're entitled to our own opinions, but we absolutely will not shy away. We are not gonna cower to anyone that thinks this is anything other than what it is. And I embrace that challenge, right? Because if we're not rocking the boat a little bit, we're not towing that line enough, right? And right now our society needs that.
Well, Claire, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Where I want to
Claire
go.
told me she washed your hair this morning, so she got
I
she
did,
got all dressed
and straightened it. Normally my hair
Yeah.
looks like Bear's, but today it's
Hey,
straight
easy
for you
now.
guys. Yeah.
I'm not having a great. Maybe I'm decent
Yeah, you
hair
got the
game.
flow going.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
going. It's
yeah.
going.
So what I would love to do is, because Bear provided a very expansive kind of intro to the topic we're discussing today. But Claire, you have the job of taking this passion and trying to channel it into something that we're putting in front of our consumers. So as you look at a big campaign or big campaigns, as he said, both Betsy Ross Gadsden and then the Veterans Day, let's start with the Betsy Ross Gadsden. How are you approaching a couple of the things Bear and the team, the broader team, kind of are looking to achieve through a campaign like this, such as kind of the unifying message, and then also just in general, like if what a lot of people recognize about Born Primitive and what I hear all the time is like, damn, you guys are able to just pump things out. So as you look at a campaign like this, like how do you as the director of marketing really hone in on like, okay, what is the message here? And then how do you put action behind that to make it something where it actually is brought to life?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my entire life I've been a writer, so that's always how I begin an idea. And Bear and I will sit and he'll kind of give me his vision, a lot of what he just talked about, and then I'll take that and start to build out a storyline. And I go through a lot of different creative processes within that. I listen to music, I get outside, I just spend time thinking and writing and journaling, and then really at the end of the day, this story starts to come together. With the Betsy Ross Gadsden one, it actually worked a little bit differently where, Bear had kind of given us his vision and we had just come off the D-Day campaign, which obviously was a huge success. And I think the success of that was due to the authenticity of the message and that we believed what we were putting out there. And we tried to make sure that it was clear exactly what the intention of that campaign was, and it delivered and landed. So coming off of that, I had a lot of inspiration, and I had a dream in the middle of the night about a snake. A live snake on set with the Gadsden shoe, with the "Don't Tread on Me." And I was like, no, like there's no way. But I mean, just the message that I got from Bear was bold. Like, we want to make an impact with this. And it is kind of wild that to love your country is a bold position to take. But I was like, okay, this snake dream came to mind. And so we three were in a meeting, and I sat and I mentioned it, and I saw Bear's eyes light up, and I was like, okay, so we're going to do this. I'm terrified of snakes, but now we got to find a wrangler. And so it just, from that, building that storyline and having that key image of what does the rattlesnake represent? What is the intention of this campaign? It's unity and boldness. How do we achieve that from a visual aspect? And then also, obviously, from a content, from a written aspect. And we've got an amazing team here who all were able to contribute ideas and bring that in to ultimately relay this message of unity and boldness.
You're being slightly disingenuous right now. Maybe I shouldn't use that word. Maybe
Oh,
a
no,
little,
you're not
maybe
gonna call me
a
out, are
little,
you?
a little less thorough than you should be. What else did you bring up in the conversation regarding the snake?
So initially, I'm getting dogged right now. This is why they invited me on. Actually, was just to make fun of me.
Spears snake.
So it was Britney Spears, yes, her VMA performance with the banana snake, which is actually a boa constrictor. But I was like, this is how my brain thinks, is I'm very like color driven, very image driven, and so I also love pop culture. But the yellow snake and the yellow Gadsden rattlesnake, obviously on the shoe, was kind of the first thing that came to mind. And Bear goes, well, that's not the snake that's on the shoe, and I'm like, oh, a rattlesnake. Okay. But then it was like in that kind of collaboration session, it was like, okay, we're really going to do this because there's no mincing words when you have a live rattlesnake with full venom that is aggressive on set with a Gadsden shoe. So
we had to go look for a snake wrangler. And
we did.
Fortunately, the local Virginia Beach snake wrangler market is promising. So we were able to get that done.
Yeah.
With a giant Betsy Ross flag behind it, which was unreal.
It was really, really cool. And I think what was so neat about seeing that campaign come to life, we had, our entire marketing team on set. So we were able to really just say, like, here's the vision, here's some of the shots that we're thinking about. Like, do you think it's possible to have the snake weave through the shoes or rattle in front of the circle of stars? And, the wrangler that we had, John from JB's Rattles, was phenomenal at helping us get those key shots. But everybody was coming in with ideas, like getting inspired by the message behind this and then having those visual assets to play with. It evolves and gets better and better and better with the meeting of the minds, which even that process in and of itself is explanatory of this campaign. It's the beauty of minds collaborating, coming together, and creating something new and wonderful.
And I think for us, that creates a wider aperture for cool shit in the future, because like you guys are thinking bigger now, right? And I think when you empower the team to like, get a fucking live rattlesnake. Yeah, of course we're doing it. You know what I mean? Whereas before we're all like, wait, no way, right? Now we can, all right, what's the next rung on the ladder next year? How do we top this, right? And that was like when I was at Red Bull, that was the culture they created, where it was like literally nothing was off limits, and that led to the best ideas because people weren't thinking with limitations. And they throw it. Now a lot of the ideas would have to get scrubbed because can't do that, sorry. But then we're like, hey, let's jump a dude from the stratosphere at 130,000 feet from a space capsule. They're like, well, shoot. Let's work that. Before you know it, they did it, right? Broke a YouTube record for live streams at the time. You know what I mean? So while we are obviously nowhere near that level, you guys have kind of really, been empowered, hopefully, in those creative moments to really kind of, all right, no limitations. If there were infinite resources, how do we portray this? Having the snake over at the warehouse, and I remember like even when I pulled in the driveway, I got the heebie-jeebies. I was like, all right, they're around here somewhere. Because I hate snakes. I can do spiders. I do anything else, but snakes, especially rattlesnakes. And then I went in there, and you could hear the rattle, and I'm like, oh man. And then he had me do a video right in front of it, and he's like, oh, you're out of strike range. I'm like, no, how about I walk forward like 2 or 3 more? No, you're fine right there. And this thing's literally rattling behind me as I'm talking with my back to it, which I did not like. But we had a lot of fun with it. I just want to read a couple of the Benjamin Franklin quotes on the snake really quick, because the cool thing about this symbol is it goes back to, of course, the birth of the Republic and like what it stood for, and just the disposition of the rattlesnake. Like, hey, if you don't mess with it, it's going to leave you alone, right? But if you mess with it, it's going to strike, and it's deadly. And for much of our history, that was the disposition of America, right? So I wanted to read a few quotes and that's why Benjamin Franklin thought it was like such a perfect symbol of our foundation. So here we go. Here's 2 of them from Benjamin Franklin. She may therefore be esteemed an emblem of vigilance. She never begins an attack, nor, when once engaged, ever surrenders. She is therefore an emblem of magnanimity and true courage. And here's the other one. I like this one better, but both are pretty cool. It's amazing to observe how distinct and independent of each other the rattles of this animal are, and yet how firmly they are united together. One of those rattles singly is incapable of producing sound, but the ringing of 13 together is sufficient to alarm the boldest man living. Hell yeah, right?
Yeah.
So, that's, and it was cool in going back to the D-Day thing, really getting in the mood of the campaign, right? So like, this is dorky, but like Claire and I were listening to the Saving Private Ryan soundtrack when we were trying to write some of this creative and some copy for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It worked, right? You were like, and I was like, man, next time we do a campaign, we should all do a private screening at a movie theater. And like, we should have watched Saving Private Ryan, or we should have watched The Patriot before this. I mean, so let's add that to the list, but we should do it as a team. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And bring some drinks, and you know what I mean? Like to get the juices rolling. But really kind of immersing yourself in kind of those intangible things that really bring it to life. And I feel like we've done that, but this has been fun.
Claire, something I'd love to go a little deeper on that you just said a couple minutes ago is that it's kind of wild now. And of course, Bear opened with thoughts surrounding this kind of current day societal thought structure that's pervasive to some degree, is that you said love of the country has become somewhat controversial. And it's interesting because you have the task of bringing a moment like this to life and remaining tasteful, as opposed to either just like clickbaity or controversial. Now, as Bear said, we're not afraid to go against the grain, but our lead angle is never like, oh, we're just trying to be controversial for the sake of controversial or to be controversial. It needs to relate to a bigger value structure. And if it's controversial, then it's like, hey, that's because it's our value. So as you look to bring a moment like this to life, how do you balance kind of not coming across as distasteful and just trying to rock the boat, and more focused on, this is because this resonates with who we are as a group, both from a company level and then in an individual level within the company?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it is a real challenge. And I think, top level is that we live in a society right now where a lot of messages are very watered down. So anything that's direct is likely going to be perceived as controversial in some capacity. But my perspective on it is that when you have a value system that you're promoting, such as love of country, and being proud that our country was established upon the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If somebody finds that controversial, for me, I'm like, that's your opinion. And the beauty of America is that you're allowed to disagree with me, and there aren't consequences to that. There are a lot of countries in the world where people can't say that. So, for me, it's being authentic to the message. I think the message stands above any kind of direct call out to any group. Like, I think that's where you really start to get in, okay, this marketing is not authentic, it's hokey, it's targeted, it's, not healthy. I think that when you're true to your message and your value, if somebody perceives that in a way that's different from what you are hoping the audience takes from it, that's their choice. But when you're intentional about trying to stir up dissent or attacking any particular idea or belief system, that's when you have to, I think, really evaluate your intention behind why you're building that campaign. So for us and what we do, we are unapologetic and bold about our belief that we love our country and that we should all love our country. I can't think of a purer message than that.
Yeah, and I think when we talk about love of country, some that might not like this campaign might make the assumption that like we're saying that the country is perfect. And it's actually quite the opposite of that. We can be proud of our country and also acknowledge things that we haven't done right. In like every country has a pretty bad past. When you think of just the evolution of mankind and just how values have evolved and different, you know what I mean? Like we all kind of have a blemished past. So if someone is looking at this and is repulsed, I would challenge them to say, okay, why are you repulsed by the symbol of the birth of our country, right? We're all Americans. Like that's your symbol too. That's not exclusive to Republicans or conservatives. You know what I mean? That is all of our symbol, and we should all be proud of that. And then, of course, we can have discourse over our political beliefs in the direction of the country and all that. But at the foundation of it, that should be unanimous that, hey, this is our, while it's imperfect, we're proud of this and what it stands for, and let's try to keep making it better. So I think it's a little bit disappointing when people on certain sides of the aisle like reject these things. Oh, that's like a conservative thing or that's a Republican thing. And it's like, guys, this is all of ours, right? We should all be proud of it. I don't know if our campaign will bring that to life. It probably won't because people are pretty stuck in their ways right now, particularly 3 days before today's election. And I understand there's energy and passion, and I won't hold it against no one for how they vote or their passion behind a political stance, because at the end of the day, I think people being engaged is a good thing. But at the end of the day, it's about remembering that we're all born from the same foundation and we're all in this together. And, Tony, you and I have talked about it on some of the podcasts before, is like, at the end of the day, I feel like a lot of the kind of differences we have is, kind of created by the media, and it's kind of by design. And I feel like in a way we're all kind of getting played against each other. You know what I mean? Like I really do think we're more united than we think. But there's some really powerful entities that are really good at creating a perception that we're all against each other. And that's why you see a 50-50 split every 4 years. You know what I mean? Like when they look at the polling, like if it's a 49-46 split is like a crazy difference in public opinion on a presidential candidate race, which is nuts. When you think about that, a 3% difference is crazy, and that just shows you how effective they have been at creating this perfectly 50-50 split, and it's like one or the other. You know what I mean? And so I'm hoping there's a time, in our lives where we can get back to, not letting those people rule the airwaves, and we all realize like, hey, like we're actually not that different than we think. And maybe hopefully that's portrayed a little bit through these symbols.
When I think it's to me, there's, and you and I have talked about this on the podcast, there's a lot of this, I think, is a growth pain of us learning to use the internet, meaning like, propaganda isn't new. Having mass messages that get pushed down through people isn't new. It's been done for hundreds of years, but the vehicle at which it was done was always different. And we talked about, like, for a while it's newspaper, radio, now it's social media, like that. The intermediary has always shifted, but right now what happened, I think, is that although it is the intermediary of a lot of the influence of what's causing division, it actually is also the solution to it, because people have access to information now in a way that they never had. So it's really fascinating that yeah, a campaign like this can be viewed as controversial, but I agree too that in the sense of like, we're more unified than we know. And I think with a little bit of time, we're going to start to wake up to some of these power structures that for decades and centuries now have been, in a way, playing mind capture over an agenda that they want to push. And if you trace it back, what does it usually lead to? Financial means, meaning like there is a corporate capture happening at the highest of levels, and power and control is what they use to make sure that they still have the support they need to be a living entity. And I think some of those entities are literally in the death throes of death right now. But as with anything, both humans, animals, like when you're dying, you're going to freak out and lash out as much as possible. And I think we're going through the middle of that a little bit right now, and it's causing weird ramifications on kind of the psyche of both our nation and then worldwide, because people are honestly getting confused as to which narrative to follow. But I think people will come out of it with a truer sense of like self-empowerment, as opposed to, I mean, we just talked about it with a nutritionist of like, she's seeing it in nutrition of people like just wanting the answer, give me the answer, tell me what to do, instead of like, well, listen to your body. Like what does your body need? Does this food work? Does this not? I think that's going to start to shift as people take back kind of their sense of what it means to be a human.
Yeah, I think one more theme from here that is critical to me, and we're sending out these like really cool mahogany wooden boxes to some friends of the brand and VIPs, and we wanted to do an inscription on the inside of the box. So it'll have a flintlock pistol on the inside. It'll have a challenge coin from wood from the USS Constitution, which was our first warship, which is pretty badass. It'll have the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, and the Constitution. It'll have "We the People" inscripted on the top of the box, and then it'll have both pairs of shoes. So really cool thing that we put together, but we wanted to put one quote in there that we thought was the most important quote around this entire campaign. And I'm really pumped on the one we chose, and I'm going to read it. But before I read it, I want to talk about, we've had a few things happen over the last few years that when the dust settles, we realize that a lot of the people that were making very valid points were getting silenced. And people, in some cases, were the most credible in their field, whether it would be medicine or PhD in biology, you know what I mean? And they, before this big thing happened, they were, the people that were, very sought after for opinion on certain topics. And as soon as this thing happened, all of a sudden their opinion didn't matter anymore. And not only was it silenced, but then there were repercussions for them stating kind of that academic opinion or opinions rooted in actual ground truth, like the ER doctor in Canada, right? And I hope that is a lesson for all of us, that any time in the future that there is a major event happening and the information flow on debate of that particular topic is getting lopsided to one side, and people that have PhDs and are experts in their field are getting silenced and also crucified for saying it, a light bulb should go off of say, all right, you've gotten us once, we're not going to allow that to happen again. And obviously that happened during COVID, and there's so much things now that have now been proven true, right? But the people that were the pioneers in that moment that had the balls to say it were ridiculed, you know what I mean? And they were canceled. And I mean, you know what I mean? Like, how do you cancel a guy that's got a PhD from Stanford that's like the best in the field, right? He's like, wait a second, guys, like, I don't think your guys are quite seeing this right, and maybe there's an alternative viewpoint here, right? And it gets even scarier when you think about social media, right? And how much they control. And we already did an episode on this, Tony, but obviously Zuckerberg came out and said, yeah, we had to censor tons of information around COVID and around the 2020 election with the laptop. We would never do that again. We realized now all of those things were true, and we went out of our way to block that debate, right? Debate is exactly what we need in those moments. So we have another pandemic. Scientific debate is critical for us figuring out the truth, right? Not the opposite, right? And it makes you wonder what is under all of that that's causing, that to happen. And I have my opinions. I think you probably do too, of what was actually happening there. But that needs to be at the foundation of all of this is freedom of speech, because we're all, smart people. We're all passionate. The debate needs to happen so we could find the ultimate truth. It is only through contested dialogue that we can find the ultimate truth, and we're always going to be seeking that truth. But the second one side is able to give their opinion, we will never find truth ever again. So the quote from Benjamin Franklin that just popped off the page to me when we were reading through all of his historical stuff, because we wanted to be something from the founding fathers, is historically relevant. So I'm just going to read it. Freedom of speech is a principal pillar of a free government. When this support is taken away, the constitution of a free society is dissolved and tyranny is erected on its ruins. How fucking badass is that for the time we're living in right now, right? And I can't, obviously I'm only 36, so I don't know, maybe this has happened in our, when our parents were I can't think of a historical example in America where free speech was under attack so much today. And I think one side might make the argument of, hey, it's for our own good because we know best. We have the moral high ground. So you COVID deniers and this and that, shut up, you're going to ruin it for everyone. And while I see where they're coming from, you can't have certainty that you have the truth, right? You have to let it play out like it should, and then we can agree on it once once that debate has actually happened. But to me, that's the biggest thing. I think one side thinks that, well, we know best, so we know, we want free speech, but in this case, we can't because we know best. And it's no, that's not how it works. The whole thing about the First Amendment is there's going to be things that you find abhorrent or horrible and distasteful, but that's part of the beauty. You have to embrace that because if you come across something like that, it actually reaffirms your own belief in a much stronger way. So let's say someone is doing some, rally for something super abhorrent, I don't know, some viewpoint, maybe something, maybe back in the day, the KKK, things like that. While that's a horrible thing, and 99.9% of us would say that's horrible, them having the ability to do that was part of the First Amendment, but we all knew it was fucked up, right? So the truth became stronger by them being the outliers doing something. See what I'm saying? So there's so many examples we can give, but so I think we can't apply a moral compass to what is free speech and what's not, because the whole point is you got to let it play out. So that's what's inscribed on the mahogany box, and hopefully when the people get it, they're gonna kind of know what we were getting at.
Let's shift gears to and Bear, you kicked off with a little summary surrounding it, kind of the soon to follow campaign that's right after the Betsy Ross Gadsden, which is the debt relief, which is a unique angle for us this year. So I think to kick it off, Bear, I would love. Just because if you follow Born Primitive, Veterans Day is an important kind of pillar of our calendar when you look at big moments throughout the year. And just giving back has been something from day one that has always been a pillar of the company. But this one's unique, Bear. So I know you touched on it slightly when you kicked off, but I would love to hear what's the why behind this one? How did this come about, and what resonated with you on it to say, hey, this is an initiative that we're gonna kind of shake the snow globe a little bit and attack this from a different angle this year? Yeah,
well, for those that have been with us, they know every Veterans Day we try to do something big, right? It's our Super Bowl. It's important to us, and the opportunity came up through Forgive Co. And ironically, Eric played football at Georgetown. I played at Yale. He was an offensive lineman. I was a linebacker. So he broke the ice by letting me know that we had locked horns a few times in the trenches, and even pulled up game tape. I got an interception against them, so he pulled up game tape. And good sales pitch, Eric. That's a good way to get my attention, to send me some game tape, because I get a lot of really dumb emails every day that I never open. So good on you. So Eric at Forgive Co. They basically work with entities like us, and they help us purchase debt on other people's behalf, and we pay it off. We buy it, but it's basically, it does pay it off. So we were talking, and he was kind of pitching this idea, and I said, well, hey man, honestly, debt forgiveness is actually a little bit against our brand, because I don't really believe in that, right? I was because it was at the time Biden's trying to forgive student loans, and we're trying to give all this free shit. I hate entitlements. You know what I mean? So, hey, if you signed up for something, that's on you, man. I'm sorry, but you're an adult, and so at the surface, I was like, this is actually very against our brand. I would love to give back, but hey, we give back in other ways. We donate to veteran charities, and you know what I mean? And the veteran conversation wasn't even in the mix initially. He just knew that, hey, I've seen you guys do a lot of good. Here's another way you can do this. And then I was like, hold on a second. Is there a way to filter it by veterans? And he said, well, let me get back to you. But yeah, I think but by their DOD ID number, that could be a way we could sort through this debt, right? And I said, okay, one more filter. Can we make it specifically for medical bill debt? And he was like, what's your reasoning behind that? And I said, well, medical bill debt is not planned. It's not because you were financially irresponsible. It's usually a tragic life event, an unexpected thing that had nothing to do with how you were conducting yourself. It could be that single mom that her daughter got a rare illness and now she's $150K in the hole. Like, people like that shouldn't get crippling debt. Now, really, no one should, you know what I mean? And I wish we could do more, right? Like we did veterans this case, but like within an unlimited amount of money, I'd love to pay off everyone's debt, but we had to, obviously narrow the scope a little bit. So he was like, hey, let me get back to you. And he was like, this is a different angle. So he got back to me. He was like, all right, confirmed. We can tag it to medical bill debt and a veteran. And what do you think? And I was like, man, this is going to be huge. You know what I mean? And I was all fired up, and I looped Claire in, and looped you in of like, hey, I know we normally donate to charity on Veterans Day, but what if we did something different? And what I like about this, and I'll read a couple examples. It's an immediate impact. I mean, this is a real no shit impact. There's no catch. There's no gimmicks. They don't have to pay us anything. It's literally, they say nothing's free in life, and they're usually true. But for these people, they probably thought that. But then we had to like convince them, like, no, you don't understand. No action required. It's already done deal. Like, so they all got letters, official letters, and emails, etc. But you can imagine how that was received. They're probably looking at scratching their head, like, there's no way. Like, what's the catch? So I just thought it was a really unique opportunity. And I have to say that is the main theme here, but maybe what motivated me a little bit more on why we wanted to do this was frustration of how our government spends our money when we could be helping Americans, right? So right now we've had 10 plus million, illegal immigrants that have come across the southern border in the last 4 years. They're given a debit card, a phone, healthcare, and a room at the Roosevelt with freaking room service every day, right? I mean, that's a real thing, man. How is it that we are giving people who are not even citizens of this country more benefits than people that raise their right hand to serve it, right? Like, how crazy is that? How is it that we have, a single mom that's $180,000 in medical bill debt, will never pay that off. Her credit is absolute dog shit. She'll never get approved for a car loan or a home loan, or if she does go get a car, she's going to pay 29% interest from that shady lot on the corner outside the military base, when we're sending hundreds of billions of dollars to other countries that don't even appreciate us, right? So part of it, it was a little bit of a, kind of a, I don't want to say a middle finger, because the goal here was to make an impact, but underlying all of that, I think, is a frustration that a lot of Americans feel of like, why are we not taking care of our own? We're $30+ trillion in debt, and we think that country X should get another $100 billion when we have people starving in the streets, and we have, people that serve their country. And this shouldn't just be for people that serve, right? We chose this, but there's so many other people that deserve help. And it just makes you wonder, like, if we really thought about how we could reallocate resources as a country and focus on the people that live here, what good that could do. I mean, imagine if you could give, like, let's say you could give all teachers a $20,000 raise, right? Overnight, instant, right? Because, hey, they deserve it. They're molding our youth, right? Would you rather give every teacher $20,000 raise tomorrow, or would you rather send another $100 billion to country X so they can buy a bunch of rockets that ends up getting fed back to the people sitting on the board who were once in Congress? You know what I mean? And I'm glad that conversation is happening more. And it's not because of the traditional media. It's because of the alternative media, like the Joe Rogans, the Sean Ryans. People are becoming more knowledgeable on, wait a second, this doesn't add up. $30 trillion in debt as a country.
But we can't help Asheville.
Yeah, exactly. That, you know what I mean? FEMA, right? We just saw it, right? Hey, you get $750 and you got to fill out a form, even though you don't have internet. And, oh yeah, it'll be there in 3 weeks, right? How crazy is that, man? That same week, we announced we sent another $100 million to Lebanon. The country that houses Hezbollah and has been hosting them. You know what I mean? Like, what are we doing, guys? Right? So I'm hoping that this maybe will trigger other companies to realize, okay, if Washington isn't going to do it, and if Washington is not fixable, we need to man up as the people and do it ourselves and help each other. I'm not going to spill the beans, but next year we already have teed up an even bigger impact from what we're doing here, and it's of that theme, because I'm rounding up the troops so we can, bring people together to say, all right, how do we leverage more companies' arsenals to having a bigger impact? So this is phase one, man, and I think this is only going to get bigger, and I hope there will be a domino effect. And I hope then, I hate to say it, but like the companies that would never do this in a million years are going to see it and go, damn, hey, I know we've been doing all this woke stuff, but like we might want to do it. That you see that Born Primitive, that tattooed guy with the funny hair, yeah, that was pretty cool. Maybe we should do that. Maybe the Googles will do it. Maybe the Apples will do it. You know what I mean? The companies that would never in a million years touch a cause like this, that is, a patriotic, veteran-focused cause because of the politics of their company. Maybe they're going to have no choice because it's going to become so prevalent that like now that becomes the new corporate buzzword. And at that point, maybe it's not cool anymore, but hey, at least it's still helping Americans. And that's obviously a pipe dream. I don't think that'll ever happen. I think it'll be the Born Primitives, it'll be the Black Rifles, it'll be the kind of the predictable companies that are leveraging their platform to do good. But man, this is just freaking awesome, and I hope everyone comes out Friday. I know they will. I mean, honestly, this is the most exciting part of the year, because I remember last Veterans Day, it popped off, and we were all high-fiving in the room. And I only remember 2 years ago, I think you weren't here yet, I put up the first Veterans Day video, and it's always, so just spoiler alert, it's going to be a video of me just talking about the campaign. So for you guys listening, it will be nothing new, but we've done it every year, right? So it was the first video I ever did, and that was the year we raised $75,000, which was still good, but we were able to do 100 the next 2 years. But we posted the video, and yeah, Claire, you weren't here yet. Meta they shut down our account immediately. And the post was ripping. Like for the first 30 minutes, we were getting all kinds of comments. Hell yeah, because that was the first time we had done it, so it came out of nowhere. People weren't expecting it. And I'm scrambling because Instagram was our main channel. Now, of course, we emailed everyone and texted everyone, but that was our main channel to get this viral, to get everyone to come out and support the cause. And we spend a lot of money with Meta advertising, so it took us a while to get through to their team. But we were finally like, hey, we gave you guys millions of dollars in advertising. Like, you better freaking fix this. And like, you can't tell me it's a coincidence that we do a patriotic veteran cause, and in 30 minutes, our account is literally shut down. Like, are you kidding me? And so they restored it by like 4 o'clock that day, because I was worried we were going to go into the weekend and not have an Instagram, and then ended up going really well. But again, it's like another instance of like, what are we doing here? You know what I mean? Like, how is that controversial? We're trying to do some good. We're donating everything to charity. But we got past it, and I think we're good with them now. Hopefully we won't get shadow banned when it goes live on Friday. But yeah, I went long on that. I don't even remember your original question, but
you answered it.
All right.
Yeah.
Claire, let's recycle the same question I asked you about the D-Day Betsy Ross Gadsden. When you look at a moment like this as our marketing director, how do you bring this to life, and what are some key takeaways you want to make sure comes through to the consumer in a moment like this?
Yeah, I mean, I really look at it all as one campaign, right? Like when we launch these Don't Tread on Me and Betsy Ross shoes, that's really to inspire, the people that are seeing this content to say, oh yeah, it is okay to love America, and it is okay to get excited about the freedoms that we have here. And those freedoms we are so blessed to have, to lead right into a weekend like a Veterans Day where, Bear put it perfectly, these are people who've raised their hand to serve this nation and protect the very freedoms that we just reminded everybody it's okay to be excited and happy and blessed that you have these freedoms, that these people are being underserved, and that we have an opportunity and an obligation as beneficiaries of their sacrifice and the sacrifice that their families make to say, yes, go out and service, and that you're serving this country to protect everything that we value. Telling those stories is what's so important to me, and why, with this Veterans Day campaign, we have the opportunity, like you said, Tony, to touch real lives, to have a real impact on individual people's experiences and hear about that and share that with the world, to say, guys, it's not all rainbows and sunshine sometimes when these guys get out of service, when these guys and gals get out of service. So for me, that was the biggest factor for me in the Veterans Day campaign, was making sure that we actually bring awareness to how we can better serve our veteran community because they have done so much to provide for the very freedoms that we get to create really cool snake content for.
Yeah, and I think that really came to life when we got the first couple of emails back. So the letters have just gone out like recently, so people are just starting to get like the news. We cut the check for this on August 1st, so we had to kind of like send it early, and we knew it was going to take a while for them to buy the debt and let these people know. But I just want to read a couple of the snippets, because that really made it human for me when we like a few days ago when we got that first one. I mean, that was honestly kind of like a sledgehammer to the heart, but like in a good way, of like, damn, this is freaking real. In this first one, her debt was only $11,000, and I say only because in the cohort of people, there's one individual, it's 190. I think there's a few in the 120, 130 ranges. There's a bunch between 50 and 100. And then there's a bunch of 10, 20, 28, like that are kind of in that lower bracket. But still, you imagine, especially with the inflation right now, you take a single parent that with 3 kids. I mean, there's no extra money at the end of the month, right? So that debt is never getting paid down. And where it's even worse, because there's downstream effects, because then their credit goes down to terrible credit, and they can't. We talked about that. Like there's so many, and then they're getting bugged. People are calling them from all these unknown numbers, and they're getting things in the mail, adding to their stress they already have. You know what I mean? From this event that again was no fault of their own. And I hate that. So let me just, hopefully this will lift the spirits a little bit. And I'm not going to say her last name, but her name's Bree. She's out of Texas, and I'm just going to read a few snippets from what she wrote back. She said, it will help me fix my credit, which means I can get a house closer to work. I will also relieve some financial pressure, allowing me to provide more for my children. It feels almost unbelievable. I'm still processing it. It's hard to believe it's real. And then when she was talking about what happened, she said, I was in a car accident. I don't remember much. I felt ill. And the next thing I knew, I was bleeding from my eyes and waking up on the side of the road. I had a traumatic brain injury, fractures, and bleeding on the brain. It took years to recover. I was in school and I had to relearn many things. Although insurance covered some costs, not everything was paid for, leaving me with lingering debt. I've also dealt with PTSD, depression, and anxiety, which worsened with medications from the VA. The medications had side effects that compounded everything, and it wasn't a good situation. So this is the exact person that I wanted to help in this campaign, and it's such the real example. Like, she got in a car accident. 20 seconds before that happened, she had none of this, right? And so that was the first one we got, and that was like, that really brought it to life. And then the second individual, Samuel, also out of Texas, just a few of the snippets he said, this is incredibly positive. I don't even know why I answer the phone, but I just can't believe this. The amount of gratefulness I have right now. Debts can pile up on you. This is such a blessing, a random act of kindness out of nowhere. This guy works 12-hour nights at Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. So blue-collar guy working his butt off, trying to support his family. I mean, how hard he's chucking luggage and stuff all day long in the heat in the summer. And then, one of the things he said, an incredible amount of thanks and gratitude. There aren't many entities that take note and do anything tangible for vets when we're in need. Born Primitive's doing that, actually doing something tangible. In the workforce, I find vets struggling to make ends meet. You volunteer your service and carry those values through your life, but sometimes you get the short end of the stick. It's incredible when you come across companies like Born Primitive and Forgive Co. that stick their necks out and literally put their money where their mouths are. I'm excited for the other recipients. I know other soldiers in need. I can move forward, though, and this is an unbelievable feeling. And his amount was $23,000. So, I mean, there's like, what, 2,000 more of these people in total? Like, those are real life stories, right? And that's what it gives me goosebumps, because it shows you the potential of the problems that we can solve to help each other if we all come together and be united, right? Because it breaks my heart a little bit, because as a former service member, I always felt a little uncomfortable when people would thank us for our service, and we can board the plane early, and I really hated that, because I didn't want civilians to think like we feel like we deserve special treatment, right? And even the parking spaces, if I ever park in one of those parking spaces, Tony, and you see me, just, give me a freaking wedgie, because we shouldn't be entitled to special things. And I wish there was a way to broaden this to, the school teachers and that ER nurse and so the people that aren't a service member, or, even like our first responders too, like they're excluded from this. I want people to know that everyone can serve their country in their own way. And we chose to do veterans, obviously, because it was Veterans Day and it's near and dear to our heart. But ultimately, we need to take care of all Americans. And and I hope we can create an environment where that can become possible. And this is just one step. But if you think of, I mean, the future, I think if I can get other entities fired up about this in the future, and maybe I can even bring the big dogs in that usually wouldn't do something like this, and we can have them ride our coattails for once. What do you think, Tone?
I think I like it, and I think that's a perfect sign off for this episode. Was the last 30 seconds you gave there, because I think it encompasses everything, both with both campaigns, but specifically the Veterans Day, as far as like what message we're trying to drive home. So,
well, and I want to give you the second to last word, and then I'm just going to end with a Reagan's quote, because Reagan's fucking badass. And
okay.
that's the last thing
yeah,
I'm going to say.
For the listeners that maybe aren't watching video, Claire is 6'7", so it's a bit intimidating having her.
Yeah, 6'1", but Tony feels insecure, so it's okay.
Yeah.
It's
What are you,
okay.
Tony,
We'll
6'7"?
I am.
Yeah.
Well,
I got you by
6'6"
like
and a half.
an inch, Claire. Thank
That's
God.
it. We did have a colleague here the other day where Tony was warming up his lunch and standing by the microwave, and she passed and thought it was me, and I was like, I was wearing platform Uggs.
That's a hell of an insult to you. You went home after that. You took the rest of the day off.
I did not. No, final word from me on this. My biggest takeaway for just this kind of, our shoe launch around, it's called the Freedom Capsule for a reason. My hope is that anybody who engages with this campaign or comes and buys a pair of these shoes, it takes a moment to remember how grateful we all should be for the freedoms that we enjoy. We are so incredibly lucky, and so many people wish that they could enjoy the freedoms that we enjoy today, and that those freedoms are defended and purchased and paid for by, the people who serve our country. But like you said, Bear, they're everyday Americans are serving our country. When you're giving back to your community, when you're creating positive relationships in your circle, that is what makes America amazing. And so that's just my hope, is that everybody looks at this and kind of says hoorah and is excited, to be an American.
Love it.
Yeah, and I think before I close out with the Reagan quote, just ask, we would really appreciate anyone that can share any of this stuff we're putting out on social. Send it to your friends. That helps, obviously, the algorithm, but two, we just want to broaden the reach of this campaign. Particularly when we kick this off on Friday, you'll see a lot of products getting put out on social from us. Please share it if it's something that resonates with you, because that's how we're able to do this, right? And while my ideas might get crazier and crazier, I can cite previous activations of like, all right, I think with our growth and with the, this is a little bit more exciting, we can kind of project a bigger give back number. And this year was, of course, a significant increase in impact to our veterans. So you guys allow us to do this, and I hope you all know that, and we really appreciate it. So please do share. Tony, unless you got any other thoughts, I'm just gonna read this Reagan quote. We're gonna ride off into the sunset.
Read it, Ronnie Reagan.
All right, here we go. I'll try to lower the voice to get my Sam Elliott voice on.
Let's
smoke.
I got a pack of cigarettes if you need.
A few
one.
packs of Marlboro Red before. No, I'm kidding. All right, here we go. Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Or one day, we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was once like in the United States where men were free. Thanks, everybody.